Hi, Vera. Is that you, darling? Vera, is that you?
Hi. Good
Hi.
morning.
Good
How are
morning.
you?
Hi, Miriam. How are you?
I'm just enjoying a quick breakfast before the Zoom meeting will start. How are you? How was the weekend?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, I
And
saw you.
mazel tov on your son's engagement.
Thanks so much. I saw you in Shulbo.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So, have you met? Oh, you wouldn't have met the girl, I
No, not
suppose.
yet. No.
But you've seen photos, or
Sorry?
you've seen photographs, or
Yeah, we've spoken. And
lovely.
Yeah, she's lovely. She's really
What does
lovely.
she do? What does she do? Study
It's
or
like-
work?
It's kind of interface design of IT. So to do with the desk type,
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Good. And your son works as
Well, he's a management consultant with a firm,
Mhm.
startup, and they do insurance for startup companies. But now he's doing that, and as well as all that, he's also now with Sivan and her two brothers, setting up COVID testing clinics in North Carolina. And they've already done one. And they're doing a second one. And he rang me up. There was a tent nearby. I said, "What's the tent?" He said, "Oh, that's where that's
fantastic.
The clinic." Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely.
He's incredibly enterprising. He's just
Yes.
absolutely.
Wonderful.
Yes, he's working very, very hard with the original company, you know.
Yeah.
He's like the business development person. It's a small company, but they've done very well. And yeah.
Great.
He started off with PricewaterhouseCoopers here, and then he was there in New York as well. And then afterwards, he looked around. He worked for a while in this company. Wasn't paid just while he was doing other stuff. And then another company really wanted him, and he went through all the process of that company. And in the end, he went for this one because he just felt he'd had more independent, you know.
Good.
Yeah, it's good. And it's funny because the name of the company was Sage, right? But there's a lot of things called Sage. So now it's called Renegade. That's so funny.
Oh, that's anyway, that's fantastic. And when's the wedding planned? Are you sort of
we don't know yet. We really don't know.
Hard,
It's going to be there, or it's going to be in Israel, wherever. It will be wonderful anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's great. Yeah.
Okay, so the host is not here yet. I've got that on my phone.
Yeah.
So Johnny Brill is in confinement.
So he's in isolation.
In isolation. I mean, not up confinement.
What about Schleimer?
Schleimer's getting married next Monday.
Wow.
A woman called Klein, who's either been divorced or widowed in Khat for quite a while, and they're going to live in Israel.
Who's this?
What are you asking somebody?
No, she can't hear. No, she can't hear.
Yeah.
This is shit.
So Mary, I'm not sure if they're in isolation or not. They spoke about it at the Sudash Lishit.
Yes, I believe that they are.
They are,
but
yes.
I don't know where. But
they said for 7 days, didn't they? Yes, that's right.
7 days, yeah. Oh gosh, things we have to do. Now, if we go to Perth for a little holiday.
Oh, that's nice.
Because our future daughter-in-law is from Perth.
Oh, yes.
Just wondering if we'll have to isolate with that McGowan. He's a tough guy. I don't know what's going on there. But we won't go till after the wedding. And
oh, you said
a post-wedding l'chaim. What the kids want to do.
You said the wedding is in January, isn't it? Sorry, it's
yes, end of January.
Yeah, that's right. Lovely.
Yeah. Hopefully things are not going to go backwards, but keep forward. And we still don't know what the maximum number is going to be. But just have to sit and wait.
That's great. So they only announced their engagement very recently, doesn't it?
It's about 3 months ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
So
fantastic.
we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, Perth's a lovely place. We were there about 7 years ago for a friend's wedding, and we had a wonderful time. So looking forward to seeing it again.
Yeah. So when are you going?
Oh, well, we haven't booked any planes or anything yet, but Adam and Miriam, sorry, I keep saying Adam and Miriam. I mean, Duvi and Taryn are planning to go on the weekend of the 18th of February.
All right, after the wedding.
Yeah.
So you've got
they're able to work from Perth by the computer. Isn't that amazing? So they'll work on the Friday and they'll work on the Monday and just have the weekend to themselves.
Oh, that's lovely. So the wedding's going to be here? Or
Yes, in Melbourne.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great.
There were too many, again, Mr. McGowan, he's too unreliable. And too strict and everything.
But I was surprised here that they said there was no quarantine or even home quarantine for anybody,
When?
Here in Melbourne.
Since when's that? Well, you mean if you've been vaccinated?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Good morning, everybody. How are you, Mary? How are you?
Good morning. Hi, Kathy. How are you?
Yeah, good. I wonder when we'll be able to get around to seeing everybody.
I haven't seen you for quite a while.
Yes, it has been.
Yeah.
Okay, are we nearly ready for the thingo to start? Where are we?
I don't know when he's coming in.
2 or 3 minutes.
He is in Melbourne already, this
Yes. Yes, I believe so.
So I wonder if it's going to be a recorded session or if it's him direct.
We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
How's Avi? Good.
Thank God, all good. Trying to get work sorted
Maybe I
out.
better take the receipt. I'm going the other way. Thank you.
Oh, Rachel, I can hear you. Welcome. We haven't spoken to some people for so long. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as he comes on, we have to switch off our microphones anyway.
Kathy, has your mother-in-law in Israel?
Oh, Baruch Hashem, she's amazing. She's really doing well. Yeah. So
she gets a bit more nachas. She gets a bit more nachas now that one of the grandchildren.
The dog's there, and she's got Dov there with his kids, and she's got Kobe and Joel are both still in Israel doing programs. So,
that's lovely.
Yeah, so she's keeping herself
busy. Beautiful.
Yeah. Look, that's what we need. We need the nakas. How are you going? You've got your wedding plans, no?
Yes, we're going. We're not standing still yet, but we're going. We're still not sure by then how many people we can invite. At the moment, I don't know if the limit is 150 or what, but you know how it is. The kids want more of their friends. So
look at you know what people realize nowadays. You make a simcha. It's just beautiful making a simcha. That's the main thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they want to go to Perth about 4 weeks after the wedding, and they've invited us to join them. And we'll have a post-wedding l'chaim in Perth.
But if Perth is going to open up, then it's ridiculous.
I don't know when exactly Perth is opening up, but this is their plan at the moment.
I think the rabbi's waiting to get on.
Okay,
so
good. Have a good day.
See you. Good day.
Bye.
See you, Kathy. See you.
Okay, what do I do here? Mute myself.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Hi. Shalom
Believe it or not, I'm
Aleichem
actually
from
here. I'm not
Melbourne.
a pre-recording.
Oh, good
we're here.
morning. So it's nice to hear you.
Where
I can
are
actually
you?
respond. How are you doing? I'm right now. I'm at the Lindell's house. So Sharona has a front seat, but anyway, thank you for bearing with my pre-recorded shiurim until now.
It's
My parents will send me today.
And what was I say? It's lovely to finally be here in person. I guess we'll get started in a moment. Give people a second to log on.
Rabbi Brul, are you in isolation now? You can't come out or what? What's happening?
No, we're not in isolation now.
Oh,
We're out, but because we didn't give any pre-warning about whether we could go back to in person or not, so we figured it'd be best to stay right now, at least for this week on Zoom. We can discuss coming weeks afterwards if we want to do like a half hybrid.
okay.
Some people want to stay on Zoom, some people want to continue in person. I'm happy to discuss that.
But you're basically you're free.
I'm free.
I'm free.
I'm out of Baruch Hashem. I'm out of isolation and out of the extra isolation.
Well,
Mazel
tov.
I think Rabbi Johnny, I think you've got to ask people to mute
Yeah,
themselves.
I'm gonna mute all. So forgive me, and you can unmute if there's any questions. There we go. Okay. I think without further ado, let's start. And as I said, I've been talking to myself, pre-recording. So please feel free to butt in with your comments and points, etc. As much as I like to hear the sound of my own voice, I'd much like to hear you as well. So
People have often been putting comments or questions on the chat. So if you keep an eye on that, you'll see what people ask.
I will try and keep an eye on the chat. But also feel free to speak up as well if you are able to. That would be lovely. So okay, let us commence. I'm just going to do my screen share. So been a lot of great Rambans throughout, specifically in Sefer Bereshit, but we see quite a few important ones. One of the themes that we've seen is Ramban very much deals with where he looks at relationships between the various people in the Parsha, in the Torah, and the way he analyzes, trying to understand the depth of the relationship between the different characters. And we're going to see that definitely comes to the forefront in our Parasha when it comes to, specifically, we'll see in a moment, when we talk about dealing with the relationship and the dynamic between Rachel and Leah in Parshat Vayetze, when they're both sisters but rivals, but for the same man, as it were. And we will look at that in detail in a moment. But first, I want to start off at least with a little Ramban from the beginning of the Parasha, right, regarding Yaakov's dream. So on the screen, you can follow. The Torah says as follows: Vayetze Yaakov mibe'er shava vayel Haran. So we know Yaakov goes out and he goes to Haran. It's interesting just to note the double dynamic. On the one hand, Vayetze Yaakov mibe'er shava, he's running away. On the one hand, he's running away, he's going out. The other hand, vayel Haran, he's also looking forward. It's the idea that he's got a dual purpose. As we remember from the end of last week's parasha, he's got a dual purpose in his leaving. On the one hand, he's running away. On the other hand, running away from his brother, from everything that happened. But on the other hand, he's also running to something. He's going to Haran because he's also looking for a wife. And what happens on the way? Vayifka b'makom, he happens upon the place. Vayanen sham, it doesn't tell us what the place is. It just says the place. Chazal explained what that might mean exactly, whether it's makom hamikdash, whether the mikdash is meant to be, or parallel to where the mikdash would have been. Vayanen sham, and he spent the night there. Kiva hashemesh, because the sun set. And he took from some of the stones. He put them around his head, and he slept and he lay down in that place. And Yaakov has a dream. And behold, there is a ladder put on the ground, whose top reaches all the way up to the heavens. And behold, right? The angels of God are ascending and descending this ladder. God is, so to speak, standing at the top of the ladder. And he says, Ani Hashem Elokei Abraham Avicha. I am Hashem, the God of Abraham, your father, Elokei Yitzchak, and the God of Yitzchak. Haaretz asher tashechev aleha, the land which you lie upon. Lachai t'neana ulazarecha. I'm going to give it to you and to your descendants. V'haya zarecha ka'afar haaretz. Your descendants shall be just as numerous as the dust of the earth. Before I stand, you shall increase. Yama v'kedma v'tzafon v'negba, right? You know the song, right? All in all directions. And all families of the land will be blessed through you and through your descendants. And behold, Anochi imach, and we're going to talk about this. I am with you. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech, and I will guard you wherever you go. Vashivoticha el hadamah hazot, and I will return you to this land. Ki lo e'ezovcha, because I will not leave you. Ad asher matziti asher dibarti lach, until I do that which I had spoken to you. So Yaakov is on the way. He's on a journey to a new place. He's left Israel. I can kind of identify with this. And he's just left Israel on the way to a new place. And he's nervous. And he has a dream. And he gets a promise from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Don't worry, it's going to be okay. And although I'm the God of your fathers, and that promise which was given, you too will have. Your seed will also go. And it's that understanding that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to be with him, even though he's leaving the land now. Still, God is with him. And Ramban has a very important point here regarding just some of the details of this story, but it's a bit of an obscure story. We have a ladder, we've got angels, so to speak, going up and down it. God himself is at the top of the ladder, and God says, I'm going to be with you. So what's going on? So there are different understandings, but I think Ramban brings a very nice spin on it, if you like. So I think it's very important to see him inside here. He says as follows. Ramban says as follows, right? The ladder is established on the ground. Its top reaches up to the heavens. So he cites the pasuk. Her'ahu b'chalom, he says here, Her'ahu. God showed him b'chalom hanevuah, in a dream of prophecy. Ki kol hane'eseh ba'aretz na'aseh alidei hamalachim. Everything that happens on earth is done through malachim, right? Malachim we like to translate as angels, but it can also mean agents. Meaning God uses some sort of agent. In this world, neither big nor small, ad shuvam tityasev aladon kol haaretz. Until they first return and get permission or take leave, so to speak, from the true master God. Le'emar lefanav, say before him, etalachnu ba'aretz, we went about our business on earth. V'hinei yoshevet b'shalva o mleach ha'erev. V'hu yitzaveh eleihem, and God commands them lashuv l'redet ba'aretz v'lasod dvaro, to return to earth and do his things. So Ramban's trying to give an explanation as to what this ladder represents. What is this? These angels going up and down the ladder. Ramban says it represents, we talk about the midrash that Rashi brings. It talks about different nations. That's like sort of the classic explanation we might be familiar with. But Ramban here is very clear, and he says that the idea of the ladder is to show that HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses agents, so to speak, to perform his will. However, that's different when it comes to Yaakov. But still, this is the second paragraph here. Ramban says, but God showed Yaakov, ki hu yitzbarach, that God himself, nitzav al hasulam, is the one who's standing overseeing the entire ladder. Umavtichol Yaakov, and God is promising Yaakov, haftacha gdola, a great promise, lahodia, to inform him, shehu lo yehyeh b'yad hamalachim. Unlike everything else in this world, but God doesn't, so to speak, do directly, but leaves to agents, or in our terms, we might call it the natural order of things, right? The natural order, the science, whatever it is that God set up. When it comes to tzaddikim like Yaakov, he's not in the hands of these agents. Aval yihyeh chelek Hashem. God, Yaakov will be part of God's own private business. V'yihyeh imo tamid, and will be with him constantly. Kamosha Amar, just as it says, as we just read in the Pesukim, V'hinei anochi imach, I will be with you. Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech, and I will guard you wherever you go. Ki ma'alato gdola, because Yaakov's level was higher, greater, misha'ar tzadikim, than perhaps other temporary righteous people. Shne'emar b'hem, about whom it said, Ki malachav yitzaveh lach lishmarcha b'chol rechecha, that his angels will guard you and safeguard you and keep you on all your ways. What's Ramban saying here? Ramban is saying it's something that we started to discuss previously. You know, when we discussed it 2 weeks ago in in Parsha Vayera. Vayera, remember we spoke about that. It says Ki Yedativ. We said I know him, and we spoke about the idea that that Ramban explained. What does it mean that God says about Avraham, Yaakov's grandfather? I know him. That it means it's an intimate relationship. We spoke about the idea, right? The Hebrew idea of protexia, that a person tends to when a person has a special relationship or has personal connections, you can ask for a favor, as opposed to regular people have to go through the regular bureaucratic system. And in Ramban's thought, the idea of a tzaddik or a true tzaddik is somebody who God deals with his file directly, so to speak. And that is what Ramban is telling us here too. The malachim going up and down the ladder is not like Rashi according to the Midrash, is this perhaps represents nations. Ramban is saying something very important. Ramban is saying it's talking about God's bidding, God's involvement in the world, and what we spoke about, hashgacha, God's providence in the world. That when it comes to most of us and typical people, so God sets up a natural order, and the malachim, the angels, or just whatever you want to call it, the natural order, things happen, and God sets out about things, and when we're all subject to the natural order. Yaakov is not so. Yaakov, due to his high status, has a special relationship. If you like, his file in the whatever it is in the bureaucratic office, whatever you're dealing with, doesn't have to go and wait in line. It's dealt, through all the malachim. It's dealt with directly by God, and that is what the story of the sulam, the story of the ladder, in Yaakov's dream is telling us, according to Ramban. He's scared. He's leaving the Eretz Canaan, and he's going out to an unknown place. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling you that, all this up and down and back and forth and, being subject to the malachim, to the agents, that doesn't apply to you. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling me. I am personally overseeing your personal file, right? God, the boss, is taking his file. He's not leaving it to someone in human resources. He's taking it himself. And that is the message HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving Yaakov, according to Ramban, as he sets out on this new journey to Haran. I think it's a very powerful message. Again, understanding the idea of the nuances about how personal relationships work, both in Ramban's thought, but also for us to understand this idea that, again, when we talk about tefillah, what it is that tefillah is for Ramban. Tefillah for Ramban is us saying, okay, let's skip the line. God, can you do me a favor? And that's basically what Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling Yaakov here. I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to look after you personally. I'm not leaving you just to the mercy of my clerks, human resources, my malachim, but rather I'm going to look after you personally. So let's continue regarding Yaakov's reaction. So how does Yaakov respond? So if we just scroll down a little. Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor. Yaakov makes the following vow. If God will be with me, ushmarani baderech hazeh, and will safeguard me on this way, asher ani holech, upon which I am going. V'natan li lechem le'echol u'veged l'bosh, and God will give me bread or food to eat and clothing to wear. Meaning, if God will look after me, v'shavti v'shalom el beit avi, and if I will return in peace to the house of my father, v'haya Hashem li Elokim, and Hashem will be to me as a God. Then he promises that he will return to this place, and the pasuk continues there, and will tithe everything he has to Kadosh Baruch Hu as thanks. But it's an interesting question. He just got a direct promise from a Kadosh Baruch Hu in his prophecy, in his dream, and here he's giving conditions. If God looks after me, then I will come back and give thanks here, and I'll build another altar here, as we know he does next week's parsha. But why is this happening? Why is he asking, saying, if God will be with me? God just promised he's going to be with him. Why does he need to make these conditions? And Ramban picks up on this, among others. Why is it that Yaakov is making his condition? If God's with me, then I promise. He just got told directly by God he's going to be with him. What's going on? So Ramban answers as follows. And this is on similar lines to what we were just discussing. So first he cites Rashi here. If God will be with me. Lashon Rashi, Rashi says, what does this mean? Im yishmor li havtachot halalu shevtichani. If God will keep these promises that he assured me. Question is, why is he now doubting God? God just told him he's going to look after him. So Ramban deals with the question as follows. The Tam Hatznai, the reason for making such a condition, if God will be with me, shelo yigrom hachet. This phrase literally means that sin should not cause a change. Shelo yigrom hachet, that sin should not cause. In other words, that sin should not cause, meaning if Yaakov sins, it shouldn't cause a breach in this promise. Meaning what? Shelo yigrom hachet. That phrase, when Chazal use it, and when Ramban uses it specifically, means that a person is of a certain level, level A, but if they're not sufficiently attained, and therefore they merit a certain level of hashgacha, a certain level of divine providence, or whatever it is, a certain level of reward. If a person doesn't keep up to that level, because yigrom hachet, because chet, sin, cause or transgressions causes them to drop to level B, therefore they will no longer receive that same promise. So that's what Ramban's saying is going on here. True, HaKadosh Baruch Hu just gave the promise to Yaakov, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the promise to Yaakov at this level, and Yaakov's worried, what if I sin along the way? I won't merit those promises. Therefore, due to the doubt, he says, Shema Yigrom Hachet, maybe I'm going to sin. I won't be zocher. I won't merit those promises. Therefore, he makes the condition now. If God will be with me still, even if I fall, I'm going to promise that I'm going to return if you look after me. And Ramban continues there, citing the Midrash. V'chen amru b'Vreshit Rabbah, just as we learned in the Midrash in Vreshit Rabbah. Rav Huna b'Shem Rav Acha. Hinei anochi imcha. One place is Hinei anochi imach. Right? God just told him, "I will be with you." Uktiv. Yet it says right afterwards, Im yeh Elokim imadi. If God will be with me. What's the contradiction? Ella rather, the can from here we learn she'ein havtacha letzadikim ba'olam hazeh. There is no guarantee for tzadikim in ba'olam hazeh, in this world. What does that mean? There's no guarantee for tzadikim in this world. So this is basically what Ramban was explaining. It means sometimes yigrom hachet. So yes, a tzaddik, a righteous person on a certain level achieves a certain level of providence, a certain level of reward or promises from Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yet they can fall, and they fall from grace, and therefore they no longer merit the same promises. Still, though, Yaakov's story here tells us that it doesn't matter. It's not over. He's worried. Shelo yigrom hachet. He's worried that it should be that sin doesn't cause him to fall from grace. But still, at the end of the day, he's willing to say, that I'm going to make a promise anyway, and a commitment to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that's also an important message, which is not as explicit in Ramban's words here, but it's the idea that even though he knows that he might not always be at this level, and that's the level that he merited promises, he's still going to do his ishtadlut, he's going to do his own work in order to make sure that I make a promise and he makes a tanai, a condition. If God will be with me, then I will give back to him. So he knows I might not always stay at standard 8, which I merit the promises, but still I'm going to try, and therefore I make the commitment today to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Any questions until now? That's sort of about the story number 1. You're welcome to argue with me and tell me, Rav Johnny, you totally misunderstood the story. I'm also open to that too, but I'm assuming that silence is a good thing. Okay, all right. So let us continue. We're going to move on to, as I said, which we'll talk more now in depth about, which is the story about Rachel and Leah. As we all know, Yaakov, who's the first person that Yaakov meets at the well, he meets the shepherds, but out of Lavan's family, the first person he meets is Rachel. And he, in some sense, falls in love with Rachel and decides he wants to marry her, works 7 years for her, but still he is swindled out of marrying her because Lavan, at the evening of the wedding, brings Leah in her place. And it's only the next day that Yaakov realizes he's accidentally married her. So let's read the psukim inside. At the end of page 1. Vayhi va'erev, and it came to the evening of the wedding. Vayikach et Leah vito. Lavan takes, instead of Rachel, Leah, his daughter. Vayaveh ota elav yavo elaha, and he brings Leah to Yaakov, and it comes to her. V'yitein Lavan, and he brings Zilpah, the maidservant. Vahiva boker, and behold, it was in the morning when it's light, right? No electricity, so only in the morning when it's light. Vihinehi Leah, behold, who is it? It's not Rachel, it's Leah, who he's accidentally married. Vayomer el Lavan, and he says to Yaakov says to Lavan, Ma zot asitli, how could you do this to me? Halov Rachel avadti imach v'lama rimitani. I worked for you 7 years for Rachel, so why have you deceived me? By the way, rimitani, this word we saw in last week's Parsha, because what did Yaakov do to his father? He switched himself with his brother, his own sibling, in order to, so to speak, trick Yaakov, to trick Yitzchak into giving him the bracha. And what did Yitzchak say? Ba achicha b'mirma. He says to Esav, your brother came in mirma, in deceit. Same word is rimitani. So clearly the Torah is giving us a message here. It's referencing back that Yaakov in some sense is getting midah keneged midah, measure for measure, the same way that he was mirameh, he deceived his father, so too he is now being deceived in the switching of siblings. Except it's not his children who are being switched, it's his wives. So it's the same word. Important just to notice these little nuances here that the Torah is telling us. Rimitani, just like miramah from last week's Parsha. So he's very angry with Lavan. Vayomer Lavan, Lavan gives a nice excuse. Lo ye'asechen mimkomenu, it's not done in our place. It's not the minhag here. To marry off the younger daughter before the older. Malay shavuot, you know what? Finish the Sheva brachot for this one, right? Finish the first week of celebration for this, for Leah. And then you can marry Rachel as well. But avodah, of course, in return, nothing's free, right? No such thing as a free meal, right? Free dinner, right? On condition, you can marry, you can marry Rachel as well, but you have to work another 7 years. Yaakov came, so Yaakov says, okay, I've been tricked. I'll do it. He finishes the first week celebration for marrying Leah accidentally. And then Lavan also gives Rachel finally. Okay, and he receives Bilhah as a maid. But this is the important pasuk. So Vayavo Gamel Rachel. So he also then marries Rachel too. Vayehav Gam et Rachel Mileah. And the Torah tells us, and we can talk about these words, and he also loved Rachel Mileah more than Leah.
But they're in Queensland, so they are quite or a few hours behind.
More than Leah, so to speak. Vayavod imo od sheva shanim acherot. And he served him for 7 further years. So what is this?
Okay,
this
Excuse me.
to do that.
Why on earth would Yaakov agree to that?
Talk to you later. Thank you.
It's like he paid for something that he didn't get.
Why would Yaakov agree to it?
To work for another 7 years, when for the first 7 years he didn't get what he paid for. It's an
excellent. It's like I didn't order it, and it's terrible analogy. That's not right. But I didn't order this, the Parsha and in the commentators do speak about it. Interesting question. Was that Debbie? Hi, Debbie.
Yes.
So the truth is that part of it we're going to see is that even the Midrash talks about that that's no einav legarsha. He wanted to divorce her. He really wanted to divorce her, but something else happens first, very quickly, which is that she's already become pregnant with Reuven.
So she became pregnant before he
instantly.
Married
as how at least that's how before he married Russ, or she found out quite quickly that she was expecting, almost instantly. So it's clear that that's how the Midrash look at it. There are different answers, but the idea is that basically, what is it that God? It says Vayiftachet Rachma, God opens her womb. It means because he doesn't want her to be shunted aside. I mean, there are other explanations, which is that why did he agree to work another 7 years? Because I think he realized he didn't have a choice in the matter, because he met his match when it came to meeting Lavan, who was obviously very good at played the game better than anyone else. But and he knew that if I want to marry Rachel, this is what I'm going to have to do. I'm not sure he could have necessarily run away, so to speak.
Excuse me, didn't he say he also loved Leah?
So this is the thing. We're going to talk about this right now. We're actually going to talk about this when we talk in a moment. When we talk about what it means about Leah, because the Torah also uses another word, which we're going to see in a moment, which says that snu'ah, that Leah was snu'ah, from the language, not sniut, but with a sin, hated. So the Torah, we're going to see the Ramban is going to discuss what it means that Leah was hated. So that we're going to discuss in a moment. What it does say here is he also loved Rachel. So the question is, what does this gum mean here that I'm highlighting? He also loved Rachel. That implies he did love, in some sense, Leah. But Mile, he loved Rachel more. So we're going to see that's actually a bit of debate in the commentators. We're going to see in a moment. It's important to keep that in mind. Yes, please ask away. I've been missing questions for weeks. So
I was just thinking that originally when he switched, he took Leah. Why did she so submissively go when they didn't have that agreement? You know, she just allowed herself to be taken, you know, and switched.
So we're going to see in a moment, Ramban is a bit critical of her regarding that, but says she did have good intentions though. We're going to see inside in a moment in Ramban's own words, but basically, just a brief summary that I think, well, first we all know the midrash that Rashi brings, which is that she thought she was going to be shidduch to Esav, because she was the older, and that's one explanation the midrash brings that Rashi cites. And therefore, this is her opportunity to marry the tzaddik, so of course she went with it. But the other one, and Ramban brings that too. But really, I think she was scared. She didn't know what her father was doing or what the future held for her. When your father, especially in those days, when the father says, "This is who you're marrying," and you're going off, you don't have a choice about it. We're going to see inside. Okay. And Ramban discusses it. So this is all great because the fact you're bringing up all these questions is perfect because Ramban also thought of them. So full marks for everyone. Okay. I saw a question in the chat. Is it because he took Esav's place? Esav was supposed to marry Leah. Right now, Leah has to work 7 years for Rachel and 7 years for Leah in place of Esav. It's an interesting question. Chazal do talk about this, that, people were saying, Rivka has 2 sons and Lavan has 2 daughters. Yalla, perfect. Let's make the shidduchim. And that's why that's Chazal understand. It says that Einei Leah rakot, that her eyes were sort of like weak because she'd been crying. That's Chazal make the drasha. They expand it because she was crying because she thought she was shidduch of the Esav. So there's definitely that understanding in the background as well. So let's read inside. But before we get to talking about Leah, I just want to talk a little bit about Rachel and Yaakov's love for Rachel. So that's at the top of page 2 here. But yeah, have Gamet Rachel. His kirhak. Why does it Torah have to tell us? And he also loved Gamet Rachel. He loved Rachel too, or what does gam literally means also or as well? Raman says as follows: his kirhak katuv. The pasuk tells us shegam ahav Rachel. He also loved Rachel more than Leah. Vatam. Why does the Torah tell us this? What's the reason? But avor, because ki hateva. Now, often Ramban will talk about hateva, nature, and we'll talk about that in a moment. It's natural. It might have been natural for him. Ramban says it's natural that a person might, or a man might love the woman that he's with first, or he's intimate with first, or he's close with first. In other words, Leah was his first intimate relationship, so to speak. Just as Chazal talk about in Masechet Sanhedrin, yet Yaakov still loved Rachel more than Leah, which might not be which might not be the typical way, the usual way of doing it. It's not like the norm. And that's why the Torah tells us also that still he loved Rachel more. So Ramban understands this gam here, and he loved Rachel also, not like, I don't remember who it was that asked the question, but surely it says he loved Rachel as well. Sorry, I missed who it was. Feel free to identify yourself, otherwise. But whoever it was,
was Kathy. Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you, Kathy, for your question.
Screen on. Okay.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. So Ramban addresses this and says it doesn't mean that he loved Rachel as well, meaning that he doesn't mean he loved Leah. It means he still loved Rachel over Leah, even though he married Leah first. Even though Leah was his first wife, so the first one he was actually with, still he loved Rachel. So Ramban says that you might say, like Kathy, that really it means he loved in addition. So he did love Leah a little bit, just he loved Rachel more. Ramban says no. It means yet he loved Rachel more than Leah, even though he was already with Leah first. Even though Leah was the first woman he was with, still he loved Rachel. I do want to point out an interesting point here, which is critical for Ramban's thought in general. Look at this. It's natural for a person to be in love. Ramban is trying to talk here about hateva. What is norm? What is a social norm? That sort of understanding is very important in Ramban, because Ramban looks at the biblical characters as people, as human beings, not as, demigods or whatever it is. He looks at, quasi-gods, whatever word you want to use. These are people. They're not superheroes. He uses natural terms, hateva, what is the norm, and to understand derech ha'eretz, is just a natural way, in order to try and understand and relate to the figures of the Torah. And this is very important for us, because there are different ways, as we know, of trying to understand and relating to characters. Rav Aaron Kotler in America famously stated, that the avot and imahot, the matriarchs and patriarchs, are like malachim, they're like angels, and you can't criticize them. And Ramban clearly doesn't hold that way, and it's a serious machloket amongst people. But Ramban certainly doesn't hold that way. He says that it's our role to relate to the characters and understand them because we can relate to them, not because they're unrelatable, but precisely because they are. So time and time again, that's why Ramban can be critical about the characters. He says we're closer to them because, not by saying we admire them more and learn from them more, because we can relate to them, not because they're unrelatable, but dafka because they are relatable. And that's why Ramban uses terms like here, teva, wants to try and understand what's the norm and work behind the psychology to understand, as I said in our opening shiur together, regarding what I call the religious humanism, whatever you want to call it, trying to understand the character, because that is what Ramban does. He wants to understand, he wants to relate to them, unlike perhaps some of the other Parshanim, the other commentators. Ramban really wants to understand the character, relate to them. Dafka, because they are relatable, is what makes them more revered in our eyes, not because they're unrelatable. I just thought this was a great example of how Ramban tries to really understand them using terms that you and I use, and that love and nature doesn't change over time. It was just as true with Yaakov and Rachel and Yaakov and Leah as it is today. So that was about Yaakov's love for Rachel, that even though he was with Leah first, he still loved Rachel more. So what about, now we get to Leah, the questions that arose before. Vayar Hashem ki snua Leah. God saw that Leah was snua, Leah was hated. Vayiftachet Rachmasa, he opened her womb, Rachel akara, whereas Rachel remained barren. Vatahar Leah, vateled ben, and Leah became pregnant and gave birth to a son. Vatikroshma Reuven, and she calls him Reuven. Ki amra, because she said, Ki ra'ah Hashem ba'oni, because God has seen my affliction. Ki ata, is really, and that's where we like to end the pasuk. But listen to the end of the explanation. Ki ata yehavani ishi. Now my husband will love me. It's a tragedy, and we're going to look through the names of Leah's children, and they're all about the fact that she just wants Yaakov to love her. And we're going to see that in Ramban's thought in a moment as well. But what does she call? She calls him Ra'ah Hashem ba'oni. God has seen my affliction because I'm unloved. Now my husband will love me. Meaning she says, now I've got a child, now he'll love me. She feels snu'ah. As the Torah says, she's snu'ah. She's hated. Lisno is to hate. Sin'ah, right, is hate. And we're going to talk about that in Ramban's thought as to precisely why Leah was snu'ah. So let's see Ramban inside. He gives a couple of explanations. Ramban says, Ki snu'ah Leah, but Leah was hated. Hinei Leah rimta ba'achota gam ba'Yaakov. Behold, Leah deceived her sister as well as Yaakov. So she's not only deceived Yaakov, it's also, remember, according to Ramban, she's deceived Rachel as well. Because if you want to claim that she was justified in what she did, because she was doing kibud av, she was respecting her father, she'achazba, who forced her lechisa elav, ba'al tamer, right? She forced her to marry Yaakov. Hayala lahagid. Again, Ramban using psychology, she should have just said later on, she should have hinted to Yaakov that she's really Leah. Meaning, even once she'd come to Yaakov, she should have intervened, even once Lavan had taken her. Even though she was pretending to be someone else the entire night. Lefikach, therefore, lohikira ad shira. That's why it was only in the morning that Yaakov actually realized it was Leah. V'lachen sna'a Yaakov, and therefore Yaakov hated her. Why did Yaakov hate her? Because Yaakov hated her because she had the opportunity to intervene and she didn't. I think that was Hannah's question. I think so. So this is what Yaakov's saying. This is what Ramban is saying. But yes, she did have the opportunity to intervene and she didn't. Ve'elokim yodea, but God still. So on the one hand, Yaakov did hate. Yeah, why does she bear children? Because still, even though she had the opportunity to say, I'm really Leah, Ve'elokim yodea, God still knew that she did have good heart, she had good intentions. She did this in order to marry the tzaddik, right? Meaning Yaakov. That could be a reference to the midrash that everyone was quoting before, that she was supposed to marry Esav. But she had good intentions, even though she did wrong. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had mercy. And this is what they say in Bereshit Rabbah. So this was also regarding why didn't Yaakov just divorce her? Kivan, as Debbie asked, Kivan Shira'a Yaakov Ma'asim. Once Yaakov saw Sherimta Leah, the fact that Leah had deceived Bachota, deceived her sister, Natan Da'ata L'Gersha, Yaakov did want to divorce her, to get rid of her. But once God remembered her by giving her children, Amar, he said, Le'iman shel einu ani megaresh, how can I divorce the mother of my children? So he stopped. That's the reason it says Vayar Elokim. God saw. Ki chamal aleha shelo ya'azvena. God took pity on Leah that Yaakov shouldn't leave her. So he's quite clear here that Ramban that Yaakov was very angry with Leah because he felt that she did have an opportunity to even if Lavan forced her into it, to still then say, you should know I'm really Leah, I'm not Rachel, but she didn't. But Kadosh Baruch Hu saw her good intentions and had mercy on her. I'm going to just bring another explanation that Ramban brings here. Remember those that say, and among them Radak, when there's shtaim nashim, when you have two women married to a man, which is obviously the norm then, sha'achat ahuva ma'od, that one of them is particularly loved, tikarei hashniya snua kenegda, that the other wife is called snua, hated, in comparison to her. It doesn't mean that actually she's snua to mean hate. It's just a status of when you had two wives. One was called the ahuva, the more loved wife, and one was called the snua, the less loved wife. It didn't mean that she was literally hated. It's just a comparative thing. Kamosha Amar, just as it says by Ehov Gamet Rachel Milea, and this touches on Kathy's point, according to Radak, that he also loved Rachel in addition to Leah, like not like Ramban's explanation, but like Kathy's explanation, that as well. Lo Shesna'a, but not that he actually hated her, just that he loved Rachel more. But still, B'haita Busha Badavar, but nonetheless, Leah was still very embarrassed. And God saw her affliction. So Ramban here offers a second explanation, which is very different. Not that Yaakov actually hated Leah like the first explanation, but rather that in comparison to Rachel, she wasn't as loved, and therefore she was embarrassed. Busha, right? Bayesh, to be embarrassed, and therefore God saw how embarrassed she was. She married first, yet he prefers the second wife, and therefore God listened to her and gave her children immediately. So we have two very different explanations in Ramban here as to the dynamic between Yaakov and Leah. One says that she really did, so to speak, hate her. He resented her for not owning up the fact that she was Leah. Second explanation says he didn't actually resent her, but she was embarrassed because she felt second best, and therefore God listened to her. So let's continue with the time left to us, unless there's any more questions on that. Let's continue to what happens. Just to have a look at these names, I think it's very important. Look at these names of the children. It really shows this feeling that she was hated. Look how she calls her kids. Vatar Leah became pregnant. Vatele Ben, right? We did the first one. Tikrashma Reuven. She calls him Reuven. Why did she call him Reuven? Literally, see a son. Because she said, because God has seen my affliction. Now my husband will love me. Again, whatever Yaakov actually felt, Leah feels unloved here. Now my husband will love me because I've given him a son. But she becomes pregnant again. And she has another son. Tomer, she said, Shema Hashem. Why is he called Shimon? Shema Hashem, because God heard that I'm hated. So he gave me this child too. It's like a tragedy. Child 1 is called God's seen my affliction. Child number 2 is called God has heard my affliction, that I'm hated. Child 3, then she calls him Levi. Why is he calling him Vatomer, and she says, Atahapam, this time, I'm sure, time number 3, Yilaveh ishi elai. Now I've got a third child, Yilaveh ishi elai. Now my husband will warm to me, if you like. Because I've borne him 3 children. Therefore he's called Levi. But look, what does she call? Yilaveh ishi. Now my husband will come close to me. That's what she's calling her children. She's calling her children, it's tragedy. She's got what Rachel doesn't. We'll talk about this in a moment. She has everything that Rachel doesn't have. But she doesn't call her children, yes, look what I've got. I've got children. She calls them, maybe my husband will love me this time. This time he'll love me. This time he'll love me. She's looking at what she doesn't have. And the 4th child, finally, she says, has some sort of relaxation. Vatara over Ben, and the 4th child, Yehuda, she says, Hapa, this time, Odeh et Hashem. This time, I'll give thanks to God. I'll ken karashma Yehuda. And then she stopped having children so quickly. So by the time she gets to child number 4, she's able to sort of, so to speak, sit back and say, Hapa, this time, Odeh et Hashem, I'll give thanks to Hashem. But until then, it's all been, God's heard my affliction. Now my husband will love me. God's seen my affliction. This time my husband will warm to me. Just to show you what Leah must be feeling. And Ramban really highlights that for us in the piece that we just read regarding how Leah felt. Meanwhile, what's happening with Rachel? She has exactly the opposite experience. She has the beloved husband, the doting husband who loves her and wants her. What doesn't she have? She doesn't have children. But that's how the next parak continues. But Tera Rachel, and Rachel saw Kilo Yaldal Yaakov, that she had not been able to give children. Meanwhile, her sisters had 4, in one after the other. But Takane Rachel ba'achota. Rachel became jealous of her sister. Vatomer el Yaakov, and she says, and was in distress to Yaakov, Havali vanim, give me children. And if not, Meita anochi, I'm dead. We're going to talk about that phrase in a moment. But what's Yaakov's response? But Yaakov became angry, and he said, Hatachat Elokim anochi, am I in place of God? Asher minami mech privaten, who's withheld from you children? Again, because he just had 4 with his other wife. It's a very cruel response. The Chazal pick up on this. But Tomer and Rachel responds, Hine, if this is true, Amati Vilha, come take my maidservant Vilha as a concubine. Go on to her. But Teled I'll be kind, she'll bear on my knees. And I will be built up through her. So there's this fiery exchange here. Rachel has everything that Leah doesn't. She doesn't have that Leah does. She doesn't have the children. She has the beloved husband, and she's jealous of her sister. And she says, "Give me children, and if not, Meita anochi, I'm dead." So what does that phrase mean? So Ramban picks up on it. Havali vanim. Bring me children, give me children. She literally tells her husband, she's like desperate. Amram Farshim, some of the commentators explain, what does it mean? Shetit palel alai. Daven for me. She's telling Yaakov, you're a tzaddik, daven for me. But if not, Meita anochi, I'm dead. So Lashon Rashi, what does Rashi say this means? Shamisha ein lo banim chashuv kamet. Again, Rashi says, what does it mean? If not, then I die, I'm dead. It means because a person without children is considered like a met, because they have no, like a dead person, so to speak, because they have no continuation. And that's quoted in the Hu Midrash Rabbateinu, and that's based on the Midrash. Says Ramban, I don't like that explanation. But Ani Tameh, and I'm astonished. Imken, if that's the case, Lama Chara Apo, why was Yaakov so angry in his response? But Lama Amar Hatachat Elokim Anochi, why did he say, am I in place of God? But Shamel Tzadikim Hashem, because God listens to Tzadikim. If all she was doing was asking him to daven for her, why would he be so angry? So Ramban says that can't be the explanation, Rashi. But Masha Amar, and that which it says, that which he said, Abba lo hayulo banim, ani yeshli banim. It doesn't make sense either, the fact that it says in the Midrash that it's only you that God's withheld children from, not from me. Because if she's just asking him to daven for her, what's the issue? Why is Yaakov getting so angry? Don't righteous people daven for other people's as well? Don't we go to tzaddik to daven for other people as well? And Ramban and brings a few examples like Eliyahu and Elisha hit palu ba'anashim, but they daven for other people too. When he ran, it seems this is why Chazal jump on him here. Amru Bereshit Rabbah, they say in the Midrash, Amalo Kadosh Baruch Hu, God says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Kach onim et hameikot. Is this how you respond to people in distress? How could Yaakov respond? Chayecha, by your life, shebanecha, that your other sons, Atidin la'amod lifnei bana, are going to stand before her son. What's that referring to? That's referring to in Egypt when all of Yaakov's other children are at mercy to Yosef. Because of the way, again, it's that idea of Maseh Avot Simon Labanim that we see prominent in Ramban, that he likes to quote this midrash, that because of the way that he said that God has withheld you from children, but not me, Chazal say that's why all his sons end up bowing down to Yosef, who is Rachel's son, later on. That's the midrash there that Ramban quotes. But Ramban says, I don't like Rashi's explanation because it doesn't explain why Yaakov got so angry if all she was doing was asking him to daven for her. So he gives his own explanation about what it means. Havali banim, give me children, and if not, meta anochi, I die. What does it mean? He says as follows. The last paragraph here on page 2. Va'al derech hapshat, according to the simple explanation of the Torah, Amra Rachel Yaakov, Rachel simply said to Yaakov, Sheyiten labanim, literally said, give me children. Uve'emet, and perhaps in truth, Da'ata lomar, she wanted to say, Sheyit palel aleha, that he should daven for her. Aval, Sheyit palel aleha, that he should daven for her. Ad sheyiten labanim al kol panim. Daven until God gives her children al kol panim. All the way, literally, nonetheless, meaning whatever it takes. Meaning daven non-stop, go and daven like crazy. Don't stop davening until I have children. Don't just add me to your Rafa'enu or to your Shema Kolenu. That's not what she wanted. She wanted him to go off and daven non-stop until God finally answers her. Al kol panim. Ve'im ayin, and if not, what does it mean, Meita anochi? Rashi had said, and if not, Meita anochi, I'm dead, because it means I'm dead because I have no continuation. I have no, that's not what Ramban says Rachel meant. She meant, ve'im ayin, if not, shetamit hatzma b'tzar, she'll kill herself out of tsar, out of pain. In other words, this is why Yaakov got angry, says Ramban. Ramban's, again, so I understand the characters. Why is it Yaakov got so angry? It wasn't because she was asking just to daven. She's saying, you go off and you don't stop davening. I need you right now, and don't you dare stop. And if not, Meita anochi, it doesn't mean I'm like a dead person. It means Meita anochi, I'm going to die. I'm going to kill myself. That's how Ramban understands. It's like almost a threat. You better daven for me, I'm going to go kill myself because I'm in such pain. And Ramban is, despite her pain, is critical of Rachel here. Dibra shelo kahogen b'kinata, she did not speak appropriately due to her jealousy. Lechashvan, she thought that it would go to response out of Yaakov. That out of his great love for her, Yitaneh Yaakov, that Yaakov would fast, right, non-stop, v'yilbash sak ve'efar, and would wear sackcloth and ash, v'yitpalel, and would daven non-stop, ad sheyula banim shelo tamut b'tzara, until she has children so that she doesn't die out of such pain. But that's not what happened. She thought that if she showed Yaakov how desperate she was, that it would go to response out of him. That's not what happened. Even though she was so desperate, she spoke inappropriately because she was so desperate, but still, Yaakov got angry at this. Why did he get angry? Because it's not true. Tzadikim can't always just daven non-stop. Tzadikim can try, even Tzadikim can try and daven, but sometimes God just says no. And that's why he got angry. Yaakov saying to her, you can't just threaten me that daven for children, I'm going to kill myself. That's not how God works. That's not how the world works. Even you can be a great tzaddik like Yaakov Avinu, but still, he says you can't make a threat like that. You can't do that. You can't say, go daven and fast until God answers, because that's not how Kadosh Baruch Hu works. And the plan is so much bigger than us. That's why he gets angry. She'ain tfilat tzadikim bi'adam, because he gets angry because tzadikim can't just daven. They're not so powerful that they can just daven non-stop until God hears. Sometimes the answer is simply no, even for the most righteous. Uba'avur, and since because she spoke out of a woman having a hard time, to scare him, to try and threaten him, basically she's going to kill herself if he doesn't help her by davening. That's why he got angry. And that's why he says, he's not in place of God. But he can just absolutely categorically remove her barrenness. But what happened? And he is not so concerned about it. She doesn't have children, but he already does from his other wife. And that was already a bit of a cruel response. That's what Rambam picks up. Over the page, that was in order to chastise her and to embarrass her, because she gave him a threat, and therefore he got angry at her and told her off and said, you can't just daven this way non-stop. And I already have children. It was a little bit of, if you like, a bit of a nasty response to her because he was angry with her threat. But as we know, the Midrash had said that Yaakov is punished for this, and that because he says these things, so his other children do eventually bow down in Egypt to her son, to Yosef, years later. So what does happen? What does Rachel do? V'hinei, and behold, had Sadeket, this righteous woman Rachel, birota shelo tuchal lisamech al tefillah Yaakov. She saw she can't rely on Yaakov's tefillah, because it's not, even Yaakov Avinu, despite everything we said about, that his human resources file was directly in God's hand, still she can't rely on it 100%, because sometimes God simply says no. So she went back to davening for herself. How do we know this? El Shomea Tza'akat, the one who hears outcry to God. How do we know this? Because it says, Vizel, that's why it says later on, before she has Yosef, Vayishma Eileha Elokim. God heard her. So what do we see? How do we know God heard her? It must be that she went back to davening again. This episode here, she threatens Yaakov and he threatens her back, made her say, you know what, I have to daven for myself too. And in the end, it's ultimately her tefillot that are heard, and not Yaakov's. And that's a very powerful point. Unfortunately, the ping pong between Rachel and Leah continues, because what happens? So Bilhah has 2 kids, Dan and Naphtali. Leah's had 4. Rachel's had none. But Taylor Leah, and Leah sees she stopped giving birth. She had 4 in one go, one after the other, then she stopped. But Tikachet Zilpah, so she goes and takes Zilpah, Shifchata, her maid servant, just like her sister did. Vatiten Otal Yaakov Lishan, she gives her to Yaakov as a wife, and then she has Gad and Asher through her. So the ping pong continues with the sisterly rivalry. But why does she decide? She's just had 4 kids. Why does she need to then take a maidservant as a surrogate to have 2 more? Why does she do this? Ramban discusses it. Why does she need to do this? She's got children. She's got 4. Rachel has none. Why does she feel a need to then take a maid to have 4? Ramban discusses this here. But Leah saw that she stopped having children. Ramban says as follows: Lo yadati mahama says Leah. I don't know. What is this action of Leah's? Why did Leah decide to take her maid too? Why did she give her maid servant to her husband as an extra wife? She wasn't barren. She'd already had 4 sons that she should need to be built up through her maid. And it's not usual for women, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not usual for women to offer alternative wives to their husbands as well. So why is she doing this? She wasn't out of desperation that she needed a surrogate like Rachel did. She already had 4 kids. So he says, why did she do this? We must have to say, the matriarchs, the imahot, were prophets, for prophetesses. Yodot, they knew that Yaakov would eventually have 12 tribes. This they knew. And Leah wanted that most of the 12 should come from her, or from her maid servant, who's basically an extension of her, under her control. And that her sister should not beat her in the number, total tally of children. And therefore she says, Natam Elokim Schari, God has given my reward, Asher Natati Shifchati Ishti, for giving my maidservant to my husband. In other words, what's Ramban saying here? She knew she was going to have 12, and she had 4. Rachel had none. That wasn't enough for her. She needed to have more, because she knew that there was supposed to be 12. She's only had 4, and now they're having kids through Bilhah, so she has to have at least 6 through her, together with her maidservant. So she wanted to have that. Don't forget, Leah doesn't have the love of her husband. The only thing she has, the only virtue she has, is the fact that she's the one who's able to bear children. And she wants that to be her thing. That's her special thing. talk about that in a moment with the Dudaim. And therefore, she does something most peculiar here, even in a period of time thousands of years ago where it was normal to have wives. It was not normal to offer a wife when you already had children of your own. Why is she doing this? Because she's desperate to bring up the tally to have the most children, because that's the only thing she has. And we only have a few minutes left, so I really want to end off with a great tragic expression, if you like, about this relationship between Rachel and Leah, and that's through the story of the Dudaim. What happens? So Leah still hasn't had children. Rachel still hasn't had any children, but Leah's had 4, 2 with her maidservant, and Rachel's had 2 with her maidservant. Reuven, who's a little boy, goes out to the field and brings these Dudaim. And Rashi says it's jasmine, it's something to help with fertility. Ramban understands differently. And I think that's also a nice expression for this tension between Rachel and Leah. So let's have a look inside to end off. Reuven goes out in the days of the wheat harvest. He finds these Dudaim. We're not really sure what they are. Some sort of flower, some sort of plant. That's Sadeh in the field. And he brings them to his mother Leah. Rachel says to Leah, please give me some of your son's Dudaim. But Leah gets really offended. She says to Hamat, is it not enough? You've taken my husband. You also want to take my children's Dudaim, the present that I got from my son. But Rachel says, you know what? And this is a tragic deal. It's like a tragic deal. Therefore, you can have the night with Yaakov. In place of the Dudaim of your son. Yaakov comes from the field Be'erev that evening. And he's going to go towards Rachel's tent. But no, because his night to be with Rachel. But Leah comes out to meet him. And she says, you're coming with me today. Because I've hired you. This is that language. Sachar, and that's why she calls her child Yisachar, because Sachar, in some sense. I've hired you, Duda'i bani, for the in exchange for the Dudaim that my son Reuven has brought. And so he lies with her, and she becomes pregnant with Yisachar. But look at this exchange here. All Leah wants is the love of her husband, and all Rachel wants is children. And the Dudaim, which according to Rashi represents some sort of fertility treatment, it's jasmine or whatever it is. According to others, it's something different, but it was a present from her son. Can you imagine that? Leah's feeling hated, and the only thing she has is her children, and her kid comes home with a bunch of flowers for her, right? And Rachel says, "Can I have the flowers that your kid gave me?" And Leah's, all I have is this is all I have. Rachel says, that's all I want. And that is really the dynamic here. Leah says, a present from my son is all I have. Leah says, a present from my son is all I want. And they do this exchange. It's a tragic exchange. All that Leah wants is to be with her husband, who loves her sister more. And all Rachel wants is to have a son bring her a present. So they do this exchange. It's like, she come home from kinder with from creche with the first painting to go on the fridge, and Rachel goes to Leah and says, "Oh, can I have that?" So what do you mean? That's my sons. That's all I have is my children. And you want to take all my kids' art? What? My first? That's the only love she feels. And I just want to end off with this one line in Ramban due to the time, where he discusses it. He discusses exactly what what exactly the Dudaim are. So here he said Dudaim. He says siglei is like jasmine. That's what Rashi's opinion. But it's not. That's not so. Says Ramban. He disagrees on linguistic grounds. That's not what it is. Hanachon, the second paragraph in the second last paragraph on the page. The truth is, kirat stabahen. Whatever it was, some sort of flowers. She wanted them. Leah wanted them. She wanted to enjoy them. She wanted to, if you like, in modern terms, she wanted to look at her child's picture painting on the fridge. That's all she wanted. That's all she has is her children. That's all she wanted. It wasn't some sort of fertility treatment, because Rachel's ultimately answered through prayer, not through treatment, fertility treatment. Reuven basically brought some sort of flowers or plants or fruit to her. Like some sort of fruit, or like apples, a nice smelling thing. It wasn't some fertility treatment. It was a nice present. That is what it is. And that is what Leah took. Rachel wanted to take, and we'll end with that. But that's basically the exchange here that's going on between Rachel and Leah. That all that Leah has is her and Yaakov share is mutual love for the children, and all that Rachel and Yaakov share is mutual love for one another, but not for the children. And it's that tension that Yaakov that Ramban is really showing in our Parsha. So it's a little bit tragic, but Ramban's readings really help us understand the psychology of exactly what's going on in our Parsha. So I guess we will end there for this week because I'm over time. Thank you very much. Pleasure learning with you live. I want to raise coming to the Beit Midrash next week, but I'm happy to do sort of a half-half, sort of keep going on Zoom and also in person, unless there's, is there a particular desire right now to want to come into the Beit Midrash?
Yes, please.
Okay. Otherwise, I'll be having, okay, so I see a couple of hands. So I would love to see you in the Beit Midrash. Obviously, we have to be masked, etc. But we'll also do Zoom simultaneously at the same time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I hope that's a good compromise.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Lovely to
Thank
meet you.
you.
Bye,
Very
everyone.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Shavuot tov.
Thank
Shavuot
you.
tov.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, Kathy. Bye, Dan.